Live from Grizzly Farm, this is Derailed Trains of Thought. Well, welcome to episode 72 of Derailed Trains of Thoughts, and Merry Christmas,
Merry
Nick.
Christmas, Tim.
This is it's a nice place to be.
Good to get a holiday location on the holidays.
It is. We've rented out this nice, quaint little farmhouse. It was unusual to rent it from a bear, though.
We've done stranger things.
Well, true. I mean, she did seem very, very sweet.
Yeah.
And
it's
she's
snowing outside. There's that snowman outside. I thought I saw him move, but never mind that.
you might have. You know, there's some pictures of all kinds of cuddly characters, although some of them look kind of crazy, if you ask me, here on the walls.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about this bear. I mean, I feel like I really should for some reason.
Yeah. It just seems. Yeah.
But it's a very nice little spot and a good place. We're gonna have the Children of the Wells Christmas party here.
Yes, and they'll be coming over soon.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll be here before too long.
They're a little delayed because of all the snow outside.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite cold. I mean, it was pretty cold in Indiana too.
Yeah, that's
to be
true.
honest. But it's very festive. Do you have any plans for Christmas after the party this year?
Well, family will head up to or down to North Carolina to see Natasha's side of the family. And we'll spend Christmas there. So.
Cool. And will you be going on your Hayden family ski trip again?
I won't be going to that one.
Oh.
I know.
Wow.
I mean, everyone else is.
Oh, okay.
We are not.
Okay.
Because it's the last hurrah for Natasha's parents before they go back to Brazil.
Oh, right. Because they've been in the States for the last
3 months or so.
Fun. Well, I don't have any. Well, I guess since we're doing this personal family life stuff, I'm now married. No.
Surprise!
That would be a surprise to me. Especially.
Holiday weddings.
No. I'm actually working. This will sound very strange, but I'm working as a paralegal now.
Dun dun dun.
I don't think I had mentioned that last time. I don't remember it had started yet. But no, I don't think it's on the podcast at the very least. So yes, I'm doing paperwork and helping people get their Social Security and workers' comp stuff. So it's something different, but it's a steady job, and that's a really nice thing right now. So and it means I get to buy myself a PlayStation 4 on Cyber Monday.
Oh, nice!
I can't imagine what that's for.
Yeah, you don't like Kingdom Hearts at all.
There's that Final Fantasy thing
I
keep hearing about.
Yeah, that's out now, correct?
It is out now. I have not bought that yet.
Okay.
Because it is Christmas time.
Yeah.
So I want to leave room for Santa.
When's the Kingdom Hearts 3 come out?
That's like in January.
That for the 4 too, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So yeah.
So you're
just
set.
Coincidentally,
you're set for the rest of the year then.
pretty much. But
right.
But we didn't come here.
You should have brought it here to the cabin. We had some fun after.
Well, all I have right now is a single player game for it. I mean, I guess, and I don't know that we even get internet here.
And that wouldn't work very well for what we're going to talk about.
That's true, exactly. So we should get right into that.
Yeah.
So let's go to Story School. For Story School today, we are going to talk about shared experience. Because a story takes on, you can have a much different reaction to it if you're watching it alone or if you're watching it with a group.
Exactly. And so, in a lot of things we've talked about is always just assuming you're watching it by yourself or you're reading it by yourself. But that's not how a lot of art is taken.
Yeah.
Whether it's watching movies, Netflixing at home or going to the theater. Movie theater or actual theater.
Yeah, if it's a play. Yeah, obviously.
Or book clubs where you might not be reading it all at the same time, but you're all reading it in order to share with each other.
Yeah.
So
let's start with, maybe it might be worth, even before we're talking about shared experience, which will be the focus, maybe the contrast it with, kind of personal experience. Because I've noticed that sometimes if I'm watching an anime series alone, I will actually, in some ways, and this is, I guess, is one detriment to shared experience, maybe, but sometimes I will get actually more emotional over a show or a movie than I would if I was with another person. Because when you're with another person, you get very you can be a little more self-conscious.
You're aware of the other person.
Yeah, you're aware of the other person. Whereas, actually, the thing that made me think about this is, I'd watched a Let's Play of a horror series called Danganronpa. And then I watched an anime that was kind of the prequel / sequel. It was kind of weird the way they kind of intermixed them.
Yeah.
But I actually had a kind of much stronger emotional reaction to it watching the anime, which without, Let's Play commentary. Yeah. And maybe not to, I don't know that I necessarily recommend the series because the body count gets kind of high and it's a little disturbing at times, which made me think of, and because I had such a kind of like, I felt kind of like, ugh, afterwards. It reminded me of Evangelion.
Okay, yeah.
Which I also watched alone, and
I watched that alone. Well, no, actually, my dad watched a lot of it with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, in the sense that, like, I really appreciate that my dad would actually put up with that and watch it with me. I was super excited about it. I wanted to show someone,
Sure.
Have the reason you have a shared experience because, like, this is something unique and you want to share it with someone. And he actually sat down and watched some of it with me. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, kudos to your dad for that.
I know. I look back sometimes and think, what were you thinking, Dad?
It's not even, your dad is so interesting because, he's a motorcycle guy, mechanic, and, engineer and all this kind of stuff. And he'll watch just about anything with you guys.
He's very open for all kinds of crazy shows.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I got all my love of sci-fi and stuff. He has all these old science fiction doubles.
Oh, that's true. I
he was
forgot about
always
that.
very big into that growing up.
So that's really cool. You can share that sort of thing. I mean, for me, Evangelion to this day, I think is still the only anime that's actually given me nightmares. Like having.
And again, he didn't watch all of it, but remember there were a number of episodes. I think somewhere in the middle he did watch with me, and I'm looking back, I'm like, those were. I'd be asking questions about, son, are you okay? but they trusted me, and yeah.
That's really funny.
It's interesting, though you're talking about the Let's Play, and you felt more when you're watching it single. Is that there is a sense in some ways that you put the cards down, but you're also viewing how other people are going to see things. Like if Natasha and I watch something, then we'll show it to someone else, and then you'll perceive the whole movie different because wait, I forgot that was in there.
Oh yeah. That used to be the thing, like showing parents something for the first time. Like, I mean, if you had seen it before, then you recommend it, and then like the sex scene comes up, and you're like, oh well, yeah, sorry, mom.
Yeah, I didn't remember. Yeah. But on a large scale, that's sort of what the whole riffing culture is. It's a shared experience of let's all just. It removes you. Sometimes the shared experience, depending on the way it's taken, it removes you from the movie because it's as much about the community watching it as what you're watching.
That's true. And you mentioned riff. I'm assuming you're talking riff tracks.
Riff tracks, Mystery Science Theater. And then all, that kind of, there's a lot of that sort of mentality now about watching things.
It's true.
We watch it as a collective of critics.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it could be as a collective critics. Everyone has a review show nowadays, or well, not everyone, but there's a big following of that.
Yeah, luckily we never review anything on here.
Okay, point taken. But at the same time, then there's also the whole genre of reaction videos on YouTube now.
Yeah, watch while I'm watching what I haven't watched yet.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I think most people who watch those, they've already seen a thing. So then it really is it's a virtual form of sharing an experience with a friend.
Yeah. Well, I know there's certain movies that I want to show people, like if they've never seen Inception, like come watch Inception with me. And then it's half of it so you can see how they react.
I mean, that's what we did with Nathan with
the Stanley Parable.
It's like, look at this thing.
Stanley Parable is the perfect shared experience computer game because like, just go, I don't know what's going on. Just try stuff.
Yeah.
And you just sit back there laugh. Yeah. Or I would love to show Tim, for instance, 10 Cloverfield Lane because it's just one of those. Yeah. I wanted to show my parents, but they watched it without me. And I afterwards like, because my dad doesn't do suspense very well. So this is I think we've talked more about my dad this podcast than we ever have. But
that's probably true.
He doesn't do suspense real well, so we weren't sure he would go like. And he did enjoy it, but sometimes he has to just like read something or when things are going on.
Is that why Zach is always reading?
Probably at one point it was. Now it's just because he multitasks. But
okay.
I mean, like, have we told the story on here about Zach and suspense?
I think so. About Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, yeah. That's the classic.
Back.
Yeah. But yeah, he must have got that from Dad. I like suspense quite a bit.
So that's part of the fun, part of the seeing the other person's reaction for
living vicariously. Like I felt this the first time. I want other people to feel it. You can't feel it quite the same a second time.
Right. You can't recapture the first time viewing again.
Yeah.
And so being able to live it through someone else is very helpful. But then also there's even the shared experience of like when neither one of you has seen it for the first time.
It's almost like it can in the best situations be like a exponential multiplication. Like if it's one surprise by yourself, it's like even more surprise if three people were getting it at the same time. I always remember Tim, Nathan, and I watched Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny together.
Oh, yes.
And it was a funny movie. And even watching it by yourself, I think it'd be funny. But with between time night and the three of us there, it was a special cathartic experience with when the fire truck
showed
come
up
rolling in.
Yes, there's a certain something about watching something insane late at night,
especially if everyone has this kind of the humor that they jives together. They all kind of get the humor at the same time. I'm
convinced that's the only reason Adult Swim works. If you ever watch any of those, like those cartoons make absolutely no sense, and most of the time I think they're really dumb.
Yeah,
and I know this because they're people who watch it really late at night, usually drunk, probably. I think it's really hilarious.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of the charm of watching Riff Tracks or Misty often is the really late at night, and it makes it all the loopier.
And just because of my life, I rarely watch anything by myself, but I can't imagine watching Riff Tracks much. It seems so much better with other people, even if they've all seen it, because it's just a sort of show that's set up for common. I mean, when you have people there, you talk. Sometimes you talk about like bad side of shared experience. Like I teach youth sometimes, and when we watch a movie, we'll be like, guys, we're watching the movie,
and they all want to talk.
We're not talking and texting, and it's a movie to be watched. But simultaneously, there is a type of watching that's also you're interacting with the other people, but it's in context of watching.
That's true,
and that's enjoyable.
Yes, and there are certain. We talked about like there are certain experiences you can't recapture the first viewing.
Yeah.
There's certain experiences that, like with us in the Sandy Ice Cream Bunny, where you can't recapture what it was like when you watched it with this group at this particular time. There was this one time we were watching with my family. We were watching some Muppets, the Muppet Show, and it was an episode I'd seen before because I think it was from season 3, if I remember right. Because 4 and 5 are still not on DVD yet.
Maybe we can ask the bear here about it.
Yeah, we probably should. But anyway, so it was an episode of Spike Milligan, who's this British comedian who every once in a while you get a comedian on the Muppet Show who's like actually more insane than they are.
Yeah.
And he was one of those. And like I said, I'd seen the episode before, but there was this really bizarre skit that he apparently had written himself, where at one point he grabs a chicken and just shakes it. It's like, who came first? And for whatever reason, we all lost it at this. Like we were like, we'd been like, on the floor. It was late at night, and so we were all rolling laughing. And I watched it again like some other time with another friend. It just didn't have the same effect as that did.
Okay, Tropic Thunder, which is off color and everything. I don't ever seen this movie.
I've not, but I've heard about it.
But we watched it with most of my family. And there's a part with Tom Cruise, and we were just dying. It was just the funniest thing I've ever seen. It was like, Zach wasn't there. Like, Zach, you have to go watch it. He watches it. He's like, what was so funny? Because it's just the people you're with sometimes. You had to be there.
There's a chemistry. It wouldn't have worked any other way in some ways. Didn't you tell me Summer went, who was it? You went to see Emperor's New Groove.
Oh, Summer and her friend, they were like on the floor. They just could not deal with the movie. Yeah.
That's always fun. And you can't predict that sort of thing.
No, you really can't. And sometimes it's not even the movies. It's just the people you're with and the mood you're in and stuff. And that's just something special about the shared experience. Now, I was talking about the exponential. Sometimes this is what really good is about theater, like live theater. It's like done well. Everyone's feeling the same thing.
Yeah.
And you just sort of like, you're caught up in and it's different than if you're just watching by yourself, I think, because it's like everyone is feeling, there's a very physical presence of the people right there.
Yeah.
In a different way than in a movie theater normally.
Oh, absolutely. We used to talk about this when I was a theater minor, actually, what happens on stage during a play, it's going to be its own unique experience. Even though you've rehearsed it and done the same thing multiple times, there's sort of a realness to life that will never be captured again. Once something's on film or digital video, whatever, it's going to always be that way, the way that you've, in the final presentation. But live theater, it's in the moment, and there's a certain realness to it. And when you share that with a lot of people, there's something that you're all coming together to experience.
This is why theater will never die.
Yeah.
Because
it can't be replicated.
You can't replicate it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can put a musical on TV, but then it's not the same. I mean, it's still a good story.
It's interesting,
good
but
music.
It's its own thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is this kind of art form, whereas you go to the theater to experience something else.
Exactly. I mean, same reason you go to the Philharmonic, and it's different than listening to DVD, the CD.
Yeah, that's very true.
If people listen to CDs still, I don't know. So how about, we talked about a lot of visual medium. How about books?
Books are an interesting thing. The modern, of course, version of this is book clubs.
Book clubs.
Which
there are dramatic readings.
There are dramatic readings.
I've never been part of one of those, but
yeah, theater. They do some of that stuff around there. But yeah, you have to be in a real artsy community, I think, to get those much.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in some ways, audiobooks. I mean, okay, maybe.
I mean, sometimes you'll drive with your family. I'll be listening to. Happen to me sometimes.
Yeah, or I guess maybe audiobooks is not a good example, but sometimes if you read, talking about in the car, someone reads the story
That's
out
true.
loud,
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, with young kids, we're always reading like Amelia Bedelia or Space Taxi or something out loud to them. And it's a little different because they're still just kind of learning how to absorb stories and stuff. So you don't have the same sort of jovial interaction sometimes as when watching something. But sometimes Rainey's like, I stop at the end of a chapter, like, no, keep going. There's that sort of like, no, not yet, don't end it yet.
But you still get, it's still a way to experience community.
Yeah.
I remember it was very special. A couple of times, Dad would read How the Grinch Stole Christmas around December because he always really enjoyed Dr. Seuss. He didn't read to the little ones a whole lot over the year. It just was something he did, but that was something that we did sometimes, and it was really fun.
I know. Traditionally, I was just going to say that, Natasha. Traditionally, on Christmas, we read. Natasha is here.
She was like doing this really clever Grinch sneak past me or something. I was like, "What's going on?"
The best Christmas pageant ever we've read the last 2 or 3 years. We were kids.
Oh, we read it before we had kids.
Did we read before? Oh, all right. I misremember. But in any case, first off, it's just a great book. If you've never read it, it's hilarious.
I've heard of it. I've never read it.
It's so great, and it's so great to read out loud. And every year, Natasha are just laughing at the same, well, not always the same place, but it's become in some ways a tradition, in the sense of there's just certain things that like, oh, that part, and and I guess that's a shared experience. This idea that, oh, is this part now, and I guess you do that with books sometimes.
That's true. Yeah. You come to your favorite part and like, oh, read that part again.
Yeah. Or remember, oh, this is coming up. This is coming up.
Yeah.
And the thing with book clubs, it reminds me there is a type of shared experience, which is kind of like the cultural, like the water cooler. It doesn't happen. It's different now. But it used to be everyone would watch some show that everyone watched, say like Lost, on a night, and the next day everyone would talk about it or get on Google Wave and. This guy like Tim and I used to do, but there used to be the everyone would watch it at the same time and they'd all talk about it. And there's still some of that with Netflix, but it's become weirder.
And there's some of that on Twitter now. Like,
oh yeah,
if you're people who are on Twitter a lot, they have to be very careful if they don't see a certain show at a certain. Right after
there's live tweeting.
Yeah, live tweeting. And during the show, people will be commenting, and you can even talk to the actors who are in it, and sometimes they'll say like, "Oh man, that costume was really hot that day," or whatever, and which adds a whole other experience to it. Not only do you get to share it with like strangers around the world, but you're also sharing it with the people who help make it.
I mean, I guess at the heart is the sense that we love stories as humans. But we always want to share we want other people to experience what we experience. It's the same with like, oh, I went to Chicago. You need to go to Chicago sometime.
Yeah.
In real life, there's real. But if something you like, something you feel something, you had a story, you like, I want other people to share in this. And technology, like you just said, Twitter is all about that.
Yeah.
Netflix is all about like, hey, you need to watch the. Fill in the blank. People keep telling me to watch this Stranger Things show.
You should.
Yeah.
I mean, and talking on a podcast, I finally got you to watch Person of Interest,
which is great. Yeah, which I'm really enjoing.
So I mean, it works. It's a valuable way of all that.
And
stuff.
and especially I think now in a splinter, our culture is much more splintered than it used to be. It's a common thread. People can, even if they don't know anything else about each other. Oh, you like
this.
Yeah.
I like this.
Well,
I think you'll like this other thing that's
okay.
Like
shared experience. You got Pokemon Go.
Yeah, that's true.
As soon as it came out, people were complete strangers talking to each other around Pokestops, and our friend Warren, met all kinds of people around the courthouse and Auburn at 11 at night. But people are they want that connection, and that's the easiest way to make the connection because deeper things are harder in current culture.
It's a great touching stone. Yeah. Especially we feel divided on a lot of things, politically, religion, ethnicity, but if there's something, whatever it is, and for some people, it's a sports or some other
sports
hobby
is a big
activity.
shared experience.
It's a big one, but sometimes you get people, multiple people who have very different interests. If it was just their other hobbies, they would never meet. But if they can meet over a Marvel movie, and they can share that, and that's a
because
very
everyone has an
powerful
opinion
thing.
about a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars. I mean, that was the shared experience of an entire generation.
Yeah, pretty much. It still is.
Yeah.
I mean,
of the next generation.
the next generation.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, wait, that's Star Trek. But going back to the book club thing, there's another way new technology has kind of incorporated that. And this is not the way we do our book club. We do ours through forums and stuff like that. It's similar, but I don't know if you've seen this thing on Facebook. Sometimes people do where you buy a book that's one of your favorites that you like to give to someone, and then basically whoever sets it up has a post, and they say, hey, if you want to be a part of this, DM me, send me a message. And so anyway, then you buy a book, and then they'll send it to someone else who had contacted them.
Okay.
And so you get a free book. It's sort of like what you used to say Summer used to do at the bookstore.
Like the advanced reader copy sort of stuff?
Well, not just advanced reader copy, but where you pick out a book for someone else that you like, and then you get a book from a book that they recommend.
I did that once. Yeah.
It's just, and this is a virtual way Facebook, social networking.
And our
way to do
personal
it.
book club's kind of like this. We all kind of say, hey, there's a book we've always wanted to read, and we all...
And in our case, we all vote on a poll, and then that's one person. Like this month, we're going to vote on this person's recommendation or suggestions.
We really need some sort of year-end roundup on that sometime.
Oh, that's a good point.
But not probably this time. But and I guess the shared experience of book club, and because books are longer invested in whatever, is almost more sharing the ideas.
Yeah.
Then you don't share the emotion. I mean, you do certain things, but it's almost sharing the ideas and what did I feel, it's like journaling, like processing through the 300 pages
That's
together.
an interesting point. It is a little less experiential like the other ones are. Not just the recommending this because we like this, or reading it together, but it is more like let's pick this apart. Let's see, how did this tick? Did this work? Did that
and then
work?
the shared experience, like, I would never have thought of it that way. People bring different experiences to it. Then the book brings out those experiences for people to share in some ways.
That's an interesting point. In my mom's book club, several of them are homeschool moms.
Yeah.
So they've known each other for a long time, so they've got that community. But I know there's at least one person in there that is much more liberal leaning than the rest of them. And so obviously she brings some vastly different perspectives on things. And there'll be books that mom absolutely hates that she loves and vice versa.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But there's a good way to, again, connections, like interacting with someone that you wouldn't normally interact with.
And I guess it's in some ways it can be a way of opening up the other parts that are hard to talk about, especially through a book.
Yeah.
Especially book club books sometimes tend to be a little denser, deeper.
A little more challenging.
Yeah.
So stories. I mean, we've said this a number of times, but they really do build bridges in multiple ways.
I guess the one thing we have not talked about, and I'm not sure how much we can, is in the video game multiplayer realm. Again, some of those are not as story based; they're almost more just like quest based. So I don't know how much it applies.
Yeah, that is a tricky thing. I mean, again, I think
because it's almost like a sport.
Yeah, when you're doing multiplayer, I don't know how many of them. I mean, I guess you can in the I think it's easier to do multiplayer story based in like a D&D sense, role playing.
That's role playing. I guess we haven't talked about that either.
Yeah, I mean that
almost like simultaneous story creation.
Basically, I mean the game master will have sort of an outline set, and different groups will do this in varying ways.
Yeah.
Some groups will go pretty closely with the game masters. What they have set up for them. Some groups will just go on a completely different tangent.
It's almost like on the other extreme from the book club. Instead of people wrestling with ideas, they're all throwing their own spin of. They're in creation mode in like a role playing game as opposed to in a analysis mode. Mm-hmm. They're all like we're all creating together as opposed to we're all absorbing together.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I could see that. I mean, it's almost like. Well, I mean, it's funny because they're creating, but they're also experiencing.
Yeah,
because
it's weird.
it's not quite like
You have an ownership in it in a deeper way sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it's a little different than say co-author work like Children of the Wells, where we're very intentionally kind of tweaking things in there. It's
or trying to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it is more co-creation and not as much the experience. I mean it's an experience, but it's not as an audience.
Yeah.
Whereas in a D&D,
you are the audience and the creator simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly, which is kind of bizarre. But I would say even in video games, going back to that, which are more single player focused, not the multiplayer. Again, going back to Let's Play, there is more and more of an element of experiencing that together.
Yeah.
Like I used to play certain when I was going through Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy, my little sisters like to watch because you've done this with your kids.
I'll bring the story up at the end of the podcast. But yeah, Summer especially would watch a lot of my Final Fantasy with me, and it was just. She never played them, but she knows a lot about them. Anyway, and they can all hum Terra's theme. And Zach even was like, "I don't like music," and he'll just, I'll hear him hum it occasionally. Because,
nice,
because
it's a cool.
It doesn't
theme.
die.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because there is that. It is. You're all again. You're still experiencing a story together.
I'll never forget Kingdom Hearts. You think I'm obsessed with it? My sister Danielle.
Yeah.
I don't remember how old she was at the time, probably 9, 10, something like that. But Kingdom Hearts is like the perfect thing for that age group because not just because of Disney, but because it has like all these like little unsolved mysteries in the corners. And she would talk about it like nonstop, like, what do you think this means, Timothy? And like, well, I guess it's probably because of this, and try to explain this and that. And eventually, I had to like show her some other manga just so she would stop talking about Kingdom Hearts for a little while.
Okay, I'll just throw my summer story in here. So we were playing Final Fantasy VII. She was watching me all the time, and she really enjoyed it. And then we got to the point where Eris, when Sephiroth comes out of the ceiling and kills out, she stopped. She could not watch anymore. She was so mad and so disappointed. She was done. She never watched any more of it.
Of just that game?
Of that game. She was done. She still remembers it to this day, how heartbroken she was when he killed her. So again, that was one of those moments that was really a big deal at that time in video game history, and was kind of one of those cultural geeky touchstones. And she felt it.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because even though in these games, you're doing a lot of battling, they're probably like reading, like they do crafts or draw something
while we're doing the fighting.
While you're doing the actual fighting stuff and then pay attention to the cutscenes.
Yeah.
So it's the same method of like experiencing a movie or some other thing, even though it's meant to be interactive.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I think that covers a lot of ground. Did we miss anything?
Nothing that I had thought of beforehand.
So definitely, if when you have the family around over Christmas holiday this year, and you find yourself all parked in front of the TV,
watch Cloverfield.
Nice and cheery. No, I think watching TV as a family together sometimes gets a bad rap because you're not really together, but in a way you are.
Especially if you do it purposefully.
Yes.
Like not just like we're all kind of in the same room, but we're not present.
Yeah, if you're all kind of zoned out, then no, you're not really bonding together.
But there is really something, we used to have, when TGI Friday was a thing on ABC, like with Urkel and stuff, we'd all sit down on Friday and watch, and it was a family time.
Yeah.
And I think you can certainly TV, and everyone does movie theaters like this.
Yeah, sure.
They go out, you go to a movie theater because it's an experience.
Right.
Because you want to see it with other people.
Now, it can be challenging sometimes if you have especially if you have a big family, to find something that, not just to go to the theater, but even if you're at home, but to find something that everyone's going to be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we're having that trouble now because Phil and Rennie wants to go a
little heavier.
Real heavier, and Rennie just can't do it yet.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I can.
So Phineas and Ferb always works.
Phineas and Ferb is a good,
it works for all ages.
Everyone, yes.
Natasha was like, yeah, that sounds good.
That's awesome. But hopefully you can find something like that for your family.
Yeah, and then especially when we have kids. I don't know how many of our readers have kids, but
probably more
books,
and more.
That's true. But there's certain classic books reading together. I know Natasha would love to share with. I don't know if you read out loud or not, but Anne of Green Gables with Rennie. Even if she reads it herself, they can talk about.
Oh, sure.
Serendity's last middle name is Anne with an E.
Yeah. But sometimes if I I was really pumped about a certain book that I had that I wanted my sisters to read, it was just faster for me to read it to them than to convince them to read it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm always trying to convince people. Anyone I meet who loves Wheel of Time, they're like, you love it too, and we talk for like an hour because it's just one of those books that it's such an experience. You got to share it with someone else, and then everyone else is like, why do you keep talking about that book? It's because it's so multifaceted and you love the characters and etc.
You're going to wear me down eventually.
I know. And see, that's what I'm doing. You've
talked about this thing for like 10 years, as long as I've known you.
Warren realized I read it, and now he's constantly, we'll like geek out for like a half hour to just talk about stuff. He's only through like book 4 or 5.
Well, after you've read for like 10,000 pages.
You want to share it in high school, we had a group of like 4 or 5 of us. Every time a new book was out, we'd all read it. We'd all theorize about it. It was great. It was awesome. It was like watching Netflix.
Yeah.
So
without the chill.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. now we've tried to wrap this up.
I
the
got
most awkward
sidetracked.
note possible. So.
So here's what you do. You get this podcast or another one you like of ours and listen to it with someone else.
Yes. Share the love of Derailed Trains of Thought.
And with that note, we'll go to
soundtrack. So for my soundtrack today, it's always nice to include something very Christmassy sounding. For
I don't always do that during the holidays, but
I've taught you.
Yeah, I taught me well, master.
But one of the nice things to do this is to just go back at what they did last year, because they usually put out something Christmassy on OC Remix shortly after we finish our podcast. So that's what I did this time. So this is from last year. It's a remix from Super Mario 64.
Great game. Wish I played with my kids.
This is actually a game I've not played a whole lot.
It's a fun game.
It was, I think, partially because the 3D took me a while. It was, 64 era.
Yeah.
It was very new.
It was very new.
And until you get used to it, it was one that kind of got me motion sick. So I didn't play this one a whole lot, but I should give it a try sometime. But this remix is called Frosty Britches. It is remixed by Long Box of Chocolates, which sounds like a tasty holiday treat.
You never know what you're going to get.
That's true. But this is... Anyway, but this is a nice way to kick off the holiday party. So enjoy. And we're back.
Hello. That was a good song. I like it.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. In the meantime, while that song was playing, everyone from Children of the Wells arrived.
Yeah,
Say
through
hi.
the door, they stomped off their boots. And
And watch out for that icy patch. And it's kind of slick when you're coming in.
I jumped it.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And they brought cookies.
They did, and they brought a virtual Greg, who's say hi, Greg.
I am podcasting from the safety of my bedroom.
I didn't know Ma Bear had Wi-Fi.
Yes, well, Ma Bear is very hip. At least her son tries to make her that way and completely fails. But
He feels for himself too, I think.
yeah, pretty much. But so we're all cuddled around the fire. We just got finished again while the soundtrack was playing, and through the magic of the Twilight Zone, we managed to watch something. So that means it's time to give our take
On Tales. All right, Tim, so introduce our people and the episode we watched here.
our people. Okay, well, we are 5 people in search of a podcast.
I thought we were 5 characters in search of a podcast.
Oh, yes. Well, that too. No, so we watched an episode of The Twilight Zone because we thought we're talking about shared experiences. It'd be fun to share an experience, a viewing experience with all of you. And while you didn't get to watch it with us, you'll get to hear us talk about it and sort of deconstruct what happened. And the one bad thing about this, I realize, is going to be really hard to talk about this without talking about the twist ending.
So we're just going to do spoiler here.
Yeah. So if you've not seen 5 characters in search of an exit,
Go to Netflix, season 3 of Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Hopefully you don't have to fight over Netflix with Miss Piggy because she keeps wanting to binge watch Gilmore Girls.
Okay, so this episode, as the name suggests, we have 5 characters looking for exit. They're in this big circular enclosed space, trying to find a way out the entire time. There's a clown, a hobo, a major, who's basically the protagonist of the story.
He just appeared.
He just appeared. He's the newest one. A ballerina. Did I get them all?
And bagpipe player.
Oh, and bagpipe player. The
By
Scotsman.
the way, did you introduce these 5 characters yet?
Oh, well, is that what you had wanted me
Yeah,
to do?
actually, but
Well, you kind of know who they are. They've been on here often
no,
enough.
but these guys, the audience doesn't know yet.
That's true. Okay. Fair enough. If you're not familiar with Children of the Wells, which you should be,
Professional podcasters, people.
well, they should be familiar with Children of the Wells if they listen to us for a long time. But if not, we have Nathan or Nate Marchand.
Hello?
We have Nick's lovely wife, Natasha.
Hello.
And like we said earlier, joining us via the magic of the internet is Greg Meyer.
Glad to be here.
And he's the author of the most recent book, The Seekers and the Hidden, available now at childrenofthewells.com.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we watched this because we went to a list of 5 Christmassy Twilight Zone episodes, and this was number 2. We're like, oh, we'll do that one because none of us had watched. Well, Greg had watched it.
Yeah, it was really hard for us to find something that none of us had seen that we all felt could be worth talking about.
Now, there were other episodes that we considered. One that was more obviously Christmas themed was called Night of the Meek, but I had already seen that one.
Yeah.
So it was decided against that one. I'm guessing Greg had probably seen that one too.
Probably.
Yes.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed the vibe of this one. It was very like Waiting for Godot, sort of like, what do we do while we're waiting? Sort of thing.
For being on a list of Christmas, you never know quite what you're going to get with Twilight Zone. For being on a list of Christmas episodes, I wasn't quite expecting the existential crisis, but
This is the Twilight Zone. There's always an existential crisis.
yeah, fair enough.
Holidays do that to you.
So the major is the guy who, like we said, is the newest one here, and as the other ones have been here for a while.
You
Apparently,
don't know who they are or where they are or why they are.
The guy who plays the clown, I feel like he could play a really good Kefka.
Man, he was awesome. That clown, he was my favorite character.
That was something that I was a little bit concerned about early on because it seemed like both the major and the clown, they were such strong characters that I was a little bit concerned that they would end up kind of dominating the episode and the other 3 wouldn't get to do much. Now, they did do a fair amount with the ballerina.
Yeah.
So I was very happy about that, but I did feel like the hobo and the bagpipe player ended up kind of being in the background a little bit. They didn't make as many contributions.
And with a half-hour show, that can happen.
But when you have the Major, who's the latest one there, and he's the one most adamant about getting out, and the clown has such a strong personality, and he's constantly responding to what everybody else says and trying to lighten the mood or whatever
in a very philosophical way.
Yeah, and then you have what they did with the ballerina is I'm not sure exactly how to describe her. She's not really a nihilist.
She's resigned.
She's very resigned to the situation that they're in. So she's kind of the foil for the Major, who's doing everything he can to get out. And it seems like the other characters are resigned to their situation, but she's the most vocal about the resignation, whereas the clown just likes waxing philosophical.
I do feel like she kind of has more of an idea of what's out there than the rest of them do, because there's a certain point where she says that, maybe we're unloved. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to the ending with what Rod Serling has to say. And so I kind of feel like even though she may not know that she is a doll, she is the one that has the most correct idea of where they're at.
Yeah, almost like a subconscious
instinct, maybe.
Yeah, because she does seem to be the most maybe not aware, but she has this resignation, but it's not. She's willing to try stuff too. She's the most in tune with what they actually are in some ways.
So if you did not heed our spoiler warning and decided
is.
to just watch, so basically the twist at the very end is that they are all figurines in basically an orphan. What do you call it? Like Toys for Tots, basically. Yeah. It's Christmas time. They're in a big tub waiting to be taken to orphans.
It would be interesting to watch this not thinking, oh, this is one of the Christmas related ones.
I did. I didn't know it was a Christmas episode.
Okay, nice.
So when it was all of a sudden like, here's these toys for donation, I was like, whoa, okay. It was really surprising.
I was trying to peg the ending, and I almost had it when I realized, okay, they're in an enclosed space. Seems like it's open at the top, and they're trying to get to the top. And these are 5 very disparate characters. No one. Why would they be together? Why are they there? That sort of a thing.
And the clown's a
knowing
weird thing
that
to be in
this is supposed to be some sort of Christmas episode, my mind immediately went to they must all be figurines in a Christmas ornament. So then at the end there would be like a child or something that you would see who would come over and bump it or something like that, and I was along the right track, but it wasn't right.
Yeah, but there was certainly a heavy emphasis on being abandoned or being lonely or being, which I felt like it was a trash can. Like I had the whole Toy Story. Like again, like if I'd been Natasha, not knowing it had anything to do with Christmas, the ending would have been way more. You couldn't have guessed that.
No. Probably not. I mean, I think based on the website, this was aired like on December 22nd or something like that. So,
but it's Twilight Zone, so you'd be
whatever. We never know. So, but I mean, yeah. It's a nice little tie-in that you wouldn't know it was a tie-in until you actually saw the episode.
Mm-hmm. Something that I really was surprised with this one, and that is this actually was in some ways actually kind of an effective horror story as well, because we were all cringing at points with some of the way that the things were written, some of the lines that were in there, particularly the end of the Rod Serling introduction. That was chilling. Where at the end, when he's introducing the episode, he says, "We will
not tell you the end.
We won't end the nightmare, but we will explain it." I'm like,
what?
Oh my gosh! But then all the things when they're trying to get out and they're standing on each other's shoulders, and we're thinking,
that's got to be really uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh! Not only that, but we're thinking that's a long fall.
Well, and that's one of those things with the tension. Us watching together is probably more than if you're watching it by yourself. You're kind of like looking at each other like, yeah, this is bad.
And I think sometimes we were, kind of cracking jokes because we were used to.
we're trying to break the tension.
Exactly. I think like
it wasn't just, oh, this is funny. It's like we need to break the tension.
Like it was kind of uncomfortable at first. Yeah.
But it's interesting because the setup was very much like something you can tell me if I'm wrong, Natasha, like one of the post-apocalyptic young adults would be. Like, we're all trapped in this place, we can't remember what happened, but if we can just escape, we'll get the answers. It felt like something would be a setup for, like, the beginning of a YA novel.
Except they'd all have to be, like, half their age.
Well, yeah. And falling in love with each other.
Well, when there's one girl and ballerina, when there's 4 dudes and 1 girl, that's gonna be.
Yeah.
But actually, the thing is that I've seen a lot of stories with this sort of a setup. There's gazillions of them. It's just for some odd reason a story where you take these 5 disparate characters or characters who would naturally be in conflict with each other, and you put them in a small space and you force them either to work together to solve the problems, to escape, or whatever. It's a common trope. It's a common setup because it's an effective one. You take, that many people and you put them in a claustrophobic space and they're forced to be there. Mm-hmm. It's a natural conduit for conflict.
Yeah, very effective.
What I think works so well with the episode is, besides the twist, which is, fun and surprising, is that the language is so stark about who are we, what are we doing. I mean, that really does, it's kind of a universal question people are asking, even though it's a very absurd, surreal scene. And I think that's why Twilight Zone works many times, because they're asking these questions that are like underneath what people think, in their, in the dark hours of the night sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very effective. And, just to have this clown, and the language is so kind of poetic, when he's done.
Especially the ballerina.
Well, in the clown is very poetic.
He's very philosophical.
I thought he was more philosophical than poetic.
Well, I mean, his language
is more poetic, I thought.
And then, even when the guy's like, "I know where we are," and he just kind of keeps building to that, to saying hell. There's all this. He keeps adding these language, and I don't know. It's just a very.
That was actually the best joke out of the whole thing, when they're all sitting there rattling off ideas about what they could be like. We're all in a shared dream, or what were some of the other theories that they were coming up with?
They're each dreaming each other.
Yeah, all that, and then Tim says these people sound like Lost fans.
It really was like the same theories. It was really funny.
Well, what I really appreciate too is that all the characters play to the roles that they are as dolls. Mm-hmm. The major is very proactive. He's trying to find a solution. The clown is he's moving his umbrella and using it as a prop, and
awesome.
And he's always playful, but it's always but it's not always in a nice sort of fun, sort of playful. It can, kind of be at someone's expense.
Yeah.
And the ballerina also, she does a lot of movements and everything like that. The hobo and the bagpipe player don't play as much of an important role, but I feel like those two are kind of there as a sense, for the ending, that they're all dolls. You want to add a variety of different wild characters that you would kind of expect to see as dolls at that time.
Yeah, the hobo as an archetype is not something that we see as much anymore. But now that I'm thinking about it, those kind of faces he was making, that kind of sad look, that was very common for hobo characters. I mean, it was more of a clown character almost, but I guess you can.
Happy the hobo.
To get super philosophical too, they're asking all these questions of who we are and meaning, and she talks about being unloved, and then at the end it's all like maybe they'll have some children coming. It's very interesting that the answer as dolls, and I guess you could apply it to humans, is that why they're lost because they have no one to love them.
Interesting. It's like the beginning of it, I was like, there's going to be some deep metaphors here because they're lost and then they're in a closed space, so you've got that natural tension. But what they were saying, you could apply that pretty easily to people trying to understand their place in the world in general. There's some broad applications there.
Yeah, they are toys who have been discarded. Essentially, is what they are.
I think you can apply that to just normal, because they were acting like humans and they're unloved, and that's part of why they have they have this this absurdist existential crisis. Can you apply that to real humans? If they're loved, then they don't have the same existential crisis.
And I got to say, that final shot in the episode is haunting. With the crying, with the ballerina doll crying. I mean, there's no movement in any of those things. Yeah. The only movement you really see is the tears coming, and that's an image that's going to stick with me for a while. And that's the brilliance of the Twilight Zone.
So we always like to ask this question toward the end of the weekly hijack. Did we miss anything, Natasha?
Anything?
No.
All right. Well, okay. I think we've waxed philosophic about this one long enough. Of course, you know how to find our podcast, hopefully, at derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com.
iTunes, Stitcher, sometimes YouTube.
And there were rumors of another thing you want to talk about.
Before you wrap this up, I've been catching up on your podcast this week because iTunes hates you. And in the last episode, you brought up some rumors about a former contributor, Brian. And he's not here, but I've come here to address these rumors. They are 100% true. Yes, he is starting a podcast. And not only that, I'm his co-host. And not only that, it is the very podcast that we joked about in your 50th.
Woohoo!
Spin-offs.
We have spawned
Residuals.
We are a franchise now. But yeah, so yes, unfortunately, we will not be using the title that we joked about because of various potential copyright issues.
Well, didn't you say there was some other Podzilla out there?
Yes, we found out that Podzilla is the name of some sort of form of construction equipment. And that the name had variants of the name had already been used, and we're still wondering how they didn't get sued because Toho's a little bit crazy about that. In case you didn't know, in the 50th episode, Brian was on and talked about a Godzilla movie. And even though I didn't know they were going to talk about a Godzilla movie, and I fully expected it to just be Brian's segment, since I'm also a fan of the franchise, I was invited to come on there. And you guys joked that the two of us had such a good rapport that we should have our own podcast.
Matchmaking at its best.
Yep. And so now that is actually going to happen. The title of it currently, the title we're sticking with momentarily, will be Kaiju Vision Radio. And our initial goal is to do an episode that examines each of the entries in the Godzilla franchise, and we're going to talk about not just them as films, but talk about what was going on in Japan culturally and historically when the films were released that probably contributed to the themes and ideas that are being presented in each one of those films, because what a lot of Western audiences don't realize is that they're not just simple B-grade monster movies. There's actually more to most of them. Not all of them, but there's more to most of them than people think. They're not your typical MST3K fodder.
Cool. Well, be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, Nick, why don't you give your soundtrack, and then we'll maybe roast some chestnuts over this fireplace.
That sounds awesome. So I mentioned in the story school that Summer used to watch me play Final Fantasy VII, and so I really thought for this shared experience I should play something from Final Fantasy VII. I couldn't find a good Eris remix that I liked. So I'm like, I'll just find something kind of Christmassy. And there's a remix from the Voice of the Livestream album called Frozen Landscape, remixed by Tweaks. And it's kind of ambient and kind of melancholy, but I think I like it. And I suppose melancholy is good since Summer left watching Final Fantasy after Eris died. So
if it's not Christmassy, it's at least wintry.
It's wintry. It's not really that melancholy, but it's very wintry, very frozen landscape, like the title says. So I hope you enjoy. It'll be a kind of nice, soothing way out of here.
Yep.
You can leave the cabin through the frozen landscape, and we'll stay inside and
stay warm.
Yeah. So
so thank you guys for coming. Natasha is off taking care of Mercy right now, but we'll just have to eat more popcorn for us, I guess.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
So thank you again for joining us virtually, at least, Greg.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad I could make it for this.
And Nate, we'll be on the lookout for your podcast and for maybe a book soon.
I'm always writing a book. What are you talking about? I am never not writing.
Awesome. All right. Well, until next time, guys, this is Tim.
This is Nick.
Bye-bye.